Smarter, lighter, faster and greener, Audi's 4th generation A6 offers a beautifully conceived and expertly executed alternative for executive sector buyers currently considering cars like BMW's 5 Series, Mercedes E-Class or Jaguar's XF. Combining class-leading quality, comfort, refinement and technology with the kind of ownership and running costs that will play well in the practically minded fleet market, it's a difficult car to ignore. While Audi's A6 has long been the world's best-selling executive car, it's rarely been Britain's overall favourite. In 4th generation form though, there are fewer reasons than ever not to consider one. Quieter, lighter and more spacious as it is compared to its predecessor. But then the issues with the previous version, such as they were, had very little to do with comfort. It was more about a slightly detached dynamic feel, and running costs a tad higher than those of obvious rivals. If, as Audi claims, these issues have been fixed with this Mark IV model, then it's likely to represent a formidable management proposition. Of course, you could argue that Audi really should be very good at making this kind of car by now. The Ingolstadt Mark has, after all, been making mid-sized business four-doors since 1968, changing the badgework from Audi 100 to Audi A6 in 1994, but keeping the same teutonically clinical approach to wafting middle-aged businessmen between British boardrooms. All the while, though, the German brand has been refining its approach, with this car borrowing the more dynamic chassis from the A7 Sportback and using weight-saving techniques and high technology to match and beat the running costs of obvious rivals. The result could be a class-leading package. Let's check it out. At the wheel of one of these, I find myself wondering, as you probably will, just how much more luxurious something larger could really be. Paying £20,000 or so more for something Audi A8, Jaguar XJ or BMW 7 Series sized, after all, wouldn't buy you anything quieter or better built. Audi always makes lovely cabins, but this one's a step forward even by their standards. Fire the engine, for example, and you're treated to the theatrical arrival of the sat-nav screen as it powers out from a slot in the middle of the fascia. Brush your brogues against the throttle pedal and there's a subdued rumble from somewhere up ahead which vanishes almost completely as you power away. The power plant in question is almost certain, in the UK at least, to be of the diesel variety. Not that Audi hasn't tried hard to keep customers interested in the green pump. Its engineers have even developed a 2-litre petrol-electric hybrid unit for this car. And the 3-litre supercharged V6 TFSI unit that was used in the previous generation A6 is carried forward to this car. That's the engine that I'm driving here. But it all matters very little, because almost every A6 buyer on these shores is likely to have a single-minded TDI focus, with nearly 3/4 of them likely to opt for the entry-level 177 PS 2-litre TDI, either with a 6-speed manual gearbox or an 8-speed Multitronic automatic transmission. Of the remainder, most will be choosing between 204 PS 2-wheel drive or 245 PS Quattro 4-wheel drive versions of the 3-litre TDI diesel. Engine wear then that's pretty familiar from other Audi models. The step forward with this car though has been to match it with a body structure that, thanks to widespread use of aluminium in the bonnet, the doors, the front wings and across much of the suspension, is up to 80 kilograms lighter than before. Now that doesn't harm performance, as you can imagine, even the entry-level 2-litre TDI making rest to 60 in 8.7 seconds on the way to a top speed of 141 miles an hour. While the V6 models, well, they are 150 mile an hour cars, with 0 to 60 taking anything from 7.2 seconds in the 204 PS 3-litre TDI to just 5.5 seconds in the 300 PS 3-litre TFSI petrol model that I'm driving here. More important than all that though is the effect that all this weight saving has had on this car's dynamic prowess. Now, I'm not going to be polite about this. The Mark III A6 model was a fairly dull drive compared with a rival BMW 5 Series. This one must do better. And Audi has thrown everything at this design to try and ensure that it will. The structural dietary program, complemented by a longer wheelbase and a decent dose of high-tech too, with the standard inclusion of Audi's Drive Select program, which enables you to choose between comfort, auto, dynamic and individual settings for the steering, gearbox and throttle response, with an additional efficiency setting that promotes a more fuel-efficient driving style. Now, the extent to which all this works depends a little upon the model that you choose. Arguably, the best drive is delivered by the least sophisticated entry-level 2-litre TDI variant. Though like all A6s, it suffers a little from the slightly vague response of the electromechanical power steering. It has an agile feel, conferred by having to carry less weight over the front wheels, and press-on people will be rewarded by its simple, sweet-shifting 6-speed manual gearbox. The more powerful 3-litre variants counter with a more sophisticated Quattro 4-wheel drive system. So equipped, you can simply turn into a corner, enjoy the rear-biased 40-60 torque split, and keep the power on as the various computers push torque around the chassis as needed. The clever crown gear differential, borrowed from Audi's RS5 Super Coupe, that distributes torque between front and rear as needed based on the conditions that you're driving in. Well, that can be further refined by specifying a sport differential that does much the same thing from side to side at the rear. Now, this has the effect of forcing the car into a sharp corner so that the angle of the front wheels is followed more accurately. So when you're powering into a bend, instead of the wheels on one side of the front of the car spinning uselessly as the wheels on the other side of the car lack grip, well, the whole thing is much more direct, much more effective. The torque vectoring in the package just sorts it all out for you, braking the spinning wheels and putting more torque towards the tyres that need it. But of course, what's really important with this car is not B-road blasting, but highway cruising. And for an exemplary display here, there are no expensive options boxes to tick, unless of course you want to go the whole hog and specify acoustic double glazed side windows to complement the acoustic windscreen that creates a whisper quiet cabin in all A6s with a supple ride to match, even if you aren't able to opt for optional air suspension. But the lily of course can always be gilded, perhaps by adaptive headlamps that can dip themselves and vary their beam to suit town or highway conditions, even illuminating crossroads as you pass. Or perhaps by a lane assist device that can keep you from veering beyond the white carriageway lines throughout motorway travel, that can further be eased by adaptive cruise control, able to maintain a safe distance to the car in front. It can even seamlessly stop you if required. Here's a car that can park itself, can use thermal imaging to highlight things that you might have missed at night, can stop itself from pulling out dangerously to overtake another car. Here's a car that can even read temporary or permanent speed limit signs and project them onto a windscreen head-up display in front of you. Here's a very clever car indeed. According to Audi's research clinics, A6 customers value understated exterior design above almost everything else, so they should feel right at home with the conservatively evolved looks of this 4th generation model. Smart, contemporary and as easily recognisable as its predecessor, this is one Audi that's in no danger of rocking the boat. Its one notable stylistic flourish being what the designers call a tornado line, a sharp, sporty crease that runs along the side of the car, casting a shadow that narrows from front to back to give a stretched look. And if you think that this car seems to be a little lower and a little wider than its predecessor, then you're right, it is, by 10 and 20 millimeters respectively. An impression further accentuated by the wider front grille that's flanked by these slimmer LED headlamps. A little surprisingly, though this remains an impressively proportioned piece of automotive real estate, it's actually a slightly shorter car than before, 12mm shorter in actual fact, a step the Ingolstadt engineers only felt confident in taking after lengthening the wheelbase by 70mm, so that there's actually greater provision for rear seat legroom. And sure enough, here in the back, the cabin feels exceptionally light and airy. There's ample head and legroom for even a couple of 6-foot adults to stretch out in comfort. And with the broad centre armrest folded back, even enough room for a third to sit between legs astride the transmission tunnel without having to breathe in too much. In the front, seated comfortably behind the sleek wraparound dashboard, space simply isn't an issue, and this is certainly the best place from which to appreciate one of the finest cabins available at any price, with its lovely aluminium detailing, stunning build quality and sophisticated gadgets. From here, the interior feels plusher than that of a 5 Series BMWs, trendier than that of a Mercedes E-Class, and better built than that of a Jaguar XF. Luggage space at 530 litres in the boot, that's enough for 4 large suitcases or golf bags. Well, that kind of capacity is merely competitive, but it is a little bigger than that of the 5 Series, has a very wide boot opening and can be extended by flipping forward the standard split folding rear seats to 995 litres, which could be enough to preclude some from having to consider the additional capacity of the Avant Estate version. Most A6 models will be sold in the £30,000 to £45,000 bracket that's common to this class of car, with the usual premium of just over £1,000 if you'd like to talk to your dealership about the Avant Estate version. The entry-level 2-litre TDI variant that most will be looking at is costed almost identically against its BMW 520d and Mercedes E220 CDI competitors, though rather surprisingly, Mercedes does hold a slight price advantage when it comes to comparisons with the A6 in 3-litre TDI form. A premium partly explained if you're looking at that variant in its pokiest 245 PS guise by the standard provision of Quattro 4-wheel drive. Now, this also helps differentiate this variant from comparable diesel Jaguar XFs that would otherwise look attractively priced. Whichever A6 you choose, saloon or Avant Estate with whichever engine, 2-litre TDI, 3-litre TDI with 2-wheel drive or Quattro, or the 3-litre TFSI V6 supercharged petrol unit that I've got here, you should find your car to be very well equipped, with standard features like leather upholstery and satellite navigation that would cost extra on obvious rivals. Across the board, you can also expect to find Bluetooth compatibility for your mobile phone, cruise control, automatic headlamps and wipers, an auto-dimming rear view mirror, front and rear parking sensors, a 10-speaker sound system with a 6-channel 180-watt amplifier and dual-zone climate control. But that, of course, is just the start. The Ingolstadt brand invests over €2 billion each year on research and development, and the result with this car is such a roster of optional high-tech equipment that Audi centres across the UK are considering laying on tutorial sessions for buyers in much the same way that you'd find in an Apple iStore. They'll be needed. You do, after all, have to be quite a committed technophobe to properly appreciate everything that this car can do. I particularly like the thermal imaging night view assistant, which can highlight people as well as objects in the gloom. Then there's the head-up display system, which, as well as all the usual information, can display both temporary as well as permanent speed limit signs. It's read via a camera located in the back of the rear view mirror. A park assist system is useful too, able to guide you into end-on as well as side-located spaces. Neatest of all, perhaps, is the way that you can get precise views of your destination by incorporating Google Earth into a sat-nav system, optionally controllable by a fingertip-sensitive touchpad. Oh, and the way that you can create in this car a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot into which you can link your laptop or your iPad. Want to play tunes from your iPod? Go on the web, visit the iTunes store and download a track, all while driving? You can do it here. And all of this is way before you start looking at things like comfort seats with heating, cooling and massaging functions, acoustic glazing, supple leather trim for the center console, and a 15-speaker 1200 watt Bang & Olufsen stereo system. Oh, and a TV receiver. At least basic standards of safety aren't optional, with 6 airbags and all the usual electronic braking, stability and traction systems. But here again, that's only the start. You've got the option of a pre-sense safety system that initiates preventative measures when it senses that a collision is imminent. There's active cruise control. There's a side assist system that'll prevent you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another driver. There's a lane keeping assist system that'll keep dozy drivers from veering out of their carriageways on major roads. And there's active lighting, which communicates with the sat-nav to better illuminate the road ahead. Now here's where that lightweight and high-tech investment really pay off, with average fuel consumption and CO2 returns better than in any rival range. Despite offering more power than the Mark III A6 lineup, this one manages to produce returns that see it producing 30% less CO2 and with fuel consumption figures that are 40% better. Such is the pace of progress. The entry-level 2-litre TDI model emphasises the way that this has been achieved through lightweight. It tips the scales at just 1,575 kilograms. That's about the same as a little Nissan 370Z Coupe. To put that into better perspective, that's 140 kilograms less than a rival BMW 520d and 160 kilograms less than a rival Mercedes E220 CDI. The same advantage is shared by the heavier 3-litre V6 variants too. A 3-litre TDI A6, for example, is 75 kilograms lighter than a rival BMW 530d and 115 kilograms lighter than a rival Mercedes E350 CDI. Now add to that the benefits of a stop and start system that cuts the engine when you don't need it in urban traffic or when you're waiting at the lights, plus regenerative braking, the slipperiest shape in the class, and more efficient electric power steering. And it's not surprising to find that across the A6 range there are models that either match or beat their key competitors when it comes to running costs and the all-important benefit-in-kind tax liability that those figures create. Indeed, Audi reckons that A6 buyers can save up to £862 a year by opting for this car over a comparable rival. And that's all because, reclining in luxury at the wheel of a 140 mile an hour A6 2-litre TDI, you can achieve 57.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and put out just 129 grams per kilometre of CO2. Statistics that match the previously all-conquering BMW 520d in manual form. You can even slightly beat the BMW if, like most buyers, you want your car with an automatic gearbox. Independent specialists Cap Monitor reckon that this particular Audi will cost you just 44.14 pence per mile to run with a manual gearbox. And if you want the pokier 3-litre TDI engine, then the running costs don't rise hugely, thanks to an 18% improvement in efficiency for this model over previous generation A6 variants. Now that means that the 204 PS two-wheel drive 3-litre TDI A6 can return a class-leading 48.1 pence per mile running cost figure, again according to Cap Monitor. And even if you opt for the same engine with Quattro 4-wheel drive and 245 PS, the pence per mile running cost figure only rises to 56.15. So it's relatively affordable. But what about the combined fuel consumption and CO2 figures that create those running cost results? Well, if you go for the 204 PS 3-litre TDI, then you're looking at 54.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 137 grams per kilometre of CO2. Go for the 3-litre TDI Quattro with 245 PS and you're looking at 47.1 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 158 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now, as you'd expect, if you go for petrol power in the form of the supercharged 3-litre TFSI V6 that I'm driving here, you're going to take a little bit of a hit in terms of running costs. You're looking at 34.4 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 190 grams per kilometre of CO2. What about residual values? You'd expect those to be pretty strong, wouldn't you? And they are. Cat Monitor reckon that after 3 years and or 60,000 miles, an entry-level A6 2-litre TDI SE will still be worth around 37% of what you paid for it. And if you go for a 3-litre TDI variant, the return's even better, around 40%. Insurance groupings, well, they range between 27 and 36 for mainstream models. So, has Audi done enough with this 4th generation A6? Many thousands of managers who'll put many more thousands of miles under the wheels of their new A6s every month will feel so. As before, they'll value this car for its quiet, understated professionalism, further marvelling in this guise at its mind-boggling technology and rather wonderful cabin. There are perhaps more characterful cars than this smart, efficient and perfectly mannered business conveyance, perhaps even some that feel sharper at the wheel. But it's hard to think of a more complete or cost-effective choice in this sector. It's all very Vorsprung durch technique, and at the end of a very long day, you're likely to feel that that's what really matters.